Hey everybody, happy Tingy Tuesday. I am so sorry I haven't posted in 2 weeks. I actually just hit a milestone on my YouTube channel. If you guys don't know, if you haven't been following me since the beginning, I do post videos every Tuesday, and I have finally been posting every single Tuesday for an entire year. So February 2018 to February 2019, I have posted every single Tuesday, which was like huge for me. And I mean, like, it's not like a ton of work, but it's like kind of a lot of work. So I decided to give myself 2 weeks off, and I just like love you guys for continuing to subscribe. I just kept getting emails that I was getting new subscribers and so many comments, and I cannot tell you enough how much that means to me and how thankful I am that you guys have stuck by my side through my little creator vacation. And thank you so much for continuing to watch. And I have a really good video for you guys this week, so I can't wait to show you. This week I am going to be talking about all things medical on the Disney Cruise Line. So everybody always comments, what happens if you get sick? What happens if you need to go home? What happens if your back breaks? What happens if your foot breaks? What happens if you have mono? What happens if So like, I'm gonna lay it all out for you and tell you guys everything that I know about medical on Disney Cruise Line. So as you guys know, I've worked on the Disney Dream as a fairy godmother in training, and I did one contract, so I'm not like super well versed, but I'm as well versed as I can be. So here we go. On Disney Cruise Line, when you are a crew member, the medical is a little like kind of like doctor's office down on the crew deck. So if anything is ever wrong with you, from literally anything, you have a fever, a cut, a stroke, anything, you're going to medical. So I had been to medical a few times for like various different reasons, but the way that you get to medical, like you can't just go down and go to medical unless you're on a break and you can go. So unless you like go during your 1 hour lunch or your 1 hour dinner, or if you're in a different role, if you have different breaks, and if they're open. So like sometimes they're not open during your breaks, so sometimes you have to go during your workday. So you have to ask your leader or like, you know, your higher up for a like form that says that you are good to go to medical and you're cleared and like all good, and then medical has to sign that and you bring it back to your leader before you go back to work. Because sometimes if you're really sick, medical will sign you off and say she needs to be out for 4 hours, 8 hours. You can get signed off up to 24 hours depending on like your illness, and then like every 24 hours you'd have to go back and get like rechecked. So if you have to go down to medical for something, you go down, you tell them what's wrong with you, and they will either like give you medicine or they will let you see a doctor. So I know like one time I was saying that I had like cold symptoms, and then they gave me some medicine and sent me back to work. So stuff like that. I also brought like a ton of medicine on the ship when I moved on the boat. Like I brought ZQuil, Dayquil, NyQuil, Advil, Tylenol, because like you never know what you need, and you don't always know if you're going to be able to have access to that. So if you're going on the ship as a crew member, I recommend that you bring like an arsenal of medicines just in case. You never know. So my biggest issue on the ship, besides my like foot breaking, which you guys know about from previous videos, is that, oh, and we're getting TMI in this one. So like, here we go. You guys are gonna know a whole lot about me. So in our role, we're standing 70 plus hours a week. Most roles on the cruise ship, you're standing, walking, moving 70 plus hours a week. That's a long time to be on your feet. And I had good shoes. I had expensive shoes I spent a lot of money on. I bought 2 pairs and I rotated them because that's what they said you should do. So that like I would wear 1 pair of shoes one week, 1 pair of shoes another week, so that your feet don't get like accustomed to the same shape and you don't develop corns. Well, pretty much everybody in the boutique had corns on their feet. Big old corns. If you don't know what a corn is, it's basically calloused skin that grows on top and top and top of each other, and then when it rubs against anything, it hurts so bad. So I had big corns on my feet. So did a lot of girls in the boutique, and they sucked. So I started going down to medical for them. The first time I went, they gave me these things called corn pads. Now this is like foreign language to me because I had never heard of a corn. I thought only old ladies got corns. I thought that it would never happen to me because, like, I don't know, I just didn't think it would happen. So corn pads are these little pads like this big with a little hole in the middle. They're like squishy, maybe like this big, and you put it on your toe so that the corn is in the hole, so that your shoes don't touch your corn, if that makes sense. This is so sick. Even the word corn is sick. So anyway, that's what it was. So we had to work with that. These corn pads did nothing, especially when you're on your feet so long, it hurts so bad. So at first, one of my fairy friends was like, I'm going down to medical, I need this removed, and it's gotta be done. So if you need surgery or special medical attention, say you need anything that they don't provide on the ship, they will send you off on a port day. So being on the Dream, our port days were in Nassau, Castaway, and Port Canaveral. Because Castaway doesn't have medical attention, the only options for you are Nassau and Port Canaveral. So send you off means that they'll send you to a doctor. So like, I knew somebody that needed a tooth pulled, they got sent off. I knew somebody that thought that medical thought they had cancer, so they sent them off. They just like send you to a doctor. You wait at port and a bus will come get you, and everybody else that's going to the doctor, the bus will take you to the doctor, bring you back to the ship, all good, right? So my friend, who is a fairy, had her corn, wanted it removed. They sent her off in Nassau, and I'm not the biggest, like, I don't know. I'm already too scared of needles, knives. I don't want to get something done in another place. Like, I'd rather be in Florida getting it done. I don't know if it would make a difference, but my friend went off in Nassau. They sent her off to this doctor, and the doctor cut off the callus, the corn, but they like cut off a chunk of her toe. And it was like bloody and messy, and it hurt her so bad to walk on it. And I was like, I don't think that's supposed to happen. So I bit my lip, lived with my corn. I was not getting off to get it removed after that. That was scary. Also, another fairy during my contract broke her tooth in half, like a front one. So she had to go off, and they like gave her a cap, but they sent her off in Port Canaveral, so it was different. I actually waited until my contract was over and I got home and I went to a podiatrist, and she like shaved off my corn, and it was like pain-free, and no chunk of my toe was missing, and my toes are completely back to normal now. Thank goodness. So that's what like being sent off means, is that if there's a medical condition that they can't treat on the ship, they will send you to a doctor in wherever your ports are. So that's cool. There's also like isolation if you're really sick or if you have something that can be spread easily. Being on a cruise ship, you're in a contained space. If you infect somebody else is gonna get infected, who's gonna infect somebody else, who's gonna infect somebody else, and it's gonna like reach the guests at some point. Or the guests can get you sick, either way. So this happens a lot of time on cruise ships. I don't know if it's ever happened on the Disney ships, but I've read about other ships, like there was contaminated food and then a bunch of people got sick all at once. So they put you, if you're in any kind of illness that can be spread, they put you in isolation, which means they lock you in your room and you cannot do anything. You cannot leave your room. You cannot go to the mess hall. You cannot do anything. They will bring your food to you and like drop it at the door, and that's it. You're stuck in your room for however long they want to isolate you. I've only seen people get isolated up to 48 hours. So I think I would go crazy if I was isolated any longer than that. So there's isolation. There's also being signed off. So there's being signed off on the ship and there's being signed off the ship. So if you're signed off on the ship, my roommate actually had a really bad back issue and she couldn't even walk. So they signed her off in the bedroom. So she was in the room, like laying on the bed for 7 days straight. She was allowed to go to the mess, but she wasn't allowed to go anywhere else. Like she wasn't allowed to go to the parties or to anything. And if somebody saw her there, like she would be terminated. She was only allowed to go to the mess and back to our room. So that's being signed off on the ship. Being signed off the ship means that you are so sick, you like need to go home. They basically like can't help you. I had a friend who, the one that they thought might have had throat cancer, they signed him off and sent him home to Portugal. So like they couldn't help, and they weren't sure what it was. The doctors in port weren't sure what it was, so they sent him back to Portugal. They didn't fire him, he didn't lose his job or whatever, but he had to stop working to go home to figure out what it was, and then he had to be like cleared medically before he could come back. So that's like something that you don't want to happen. So there's this thing on the ship that we, all the crew members, call the injection. And that is basically a shot they give you if you're like any kind of sick. If you have like a cold, flu, whatever, you get the injection. I never got the injection. I would have never gotten the injection because I would have never let anybody put a needle near me called the injection. Nobody knows what the injection is. I'm sure it's like a steroid or something. But one of my friends during my contract got the injection, and they did it in her leg, and she was like really ill. So she got the injection, and then later on in the mess, she was walking and like completely just like fell. And she said like her leg was numb, and so I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything else about it. I don't really know about it, but like, cause I didn't ever have to get it, but like thank goodness I never did. And I'm sure again, it's just like a steroid something or another. Being on the ship, like in general, you're in a lot of recycled air. You're in the same spot. Sometimes you don't get to go outside for multiple days at a time, depending on what kind of role you have. So a few weeks into my contract, I started developing this like cough. And I was like, oh, I think I'm sick. And everybody's like, no, you're fine. Like everybody gets that a few weeks in. And I was like, okay. My friend was like, it's like kennel cough. It's like dogs, you know? And I was like, okay. But it makes sense. Like if you're all in a confined space, one person has a cough, you're gonna catch the cough. It's just like kind of like, I don't know. If you're like not taking care of yourself and you're not like outside and you're not seeing the sun and you're not breathing fresh air, like I feel like things like that are just bound to happen. But I hope that filled you guys in on what medical is like on the Disney cruise ship. And I look forward to seeing you next Team G Tuesday. Happy Team G Tuesday, everybody. Bye.